Hey, we back. I'm here on Karuta today where we're talking about dojos. I have been working towards getting a pretty nice build for a dojo run where I try and get to some high ranks, because in the past I'd only ever made it up to gold. I've done some videos on builds on dojos before, but nothing super up there with what actually will get you to the highest rank. So that's what we're looking at today. I'm currently looking at let's try and find what my rank is. I mean, it's about 1,960, but is it going to tell me that? There we go, 1,960, which is pretty reasonable. That's diamond rank, I believe, and it's getting there onto champion. Champion is 2,050, I think, something like that. There is legend above that. We'll see where we go with it. But how this build works is it basically attempts to survive infinite damage, because when you're going up against these super high rated enemies, they will be doing so much damage to you with simple punches that you can't really expect to defend it, and you're just going to die immediately. They have a lot of health, so you can't kill them that quickly, and so this is the best way that I've found to get around that. And this abuses the fact that your characters, who, at least with Kana here, I think with all of them, they have 150 health. So let's just go into a battle just to see. We have 150 health here, and a character can only take half their health worth of damage in a turn. So Kana can only take 75 damage in a single turn, and this guy over here can only take 254 damage in a single turn. This means that if you can heal 75 damage in a single turn, you are actually unkillable. It doesn't matter how much damage you are meant to be taking, you don't die. You only need to be healing that 75 per turn. In terms of killing your opponent, it's kind of just a stall. Once you get to turn 20, if you aren't aware, the damage that each card does starts ramping up a lot. And so this means that simple punches will start doing hundreds of damage even without buffs. I'm going to start by playing an example match so you can see how the strategy works, and then we'll explain about the cards we have in it and what is most important afterwards. So I'll start off here. I'm using Crowd Favorite as my opener. You can also use Grand Plan. I tried both. I found Crowd Favorite works a little nicer with Spirit because you get 3 on your second turn and 3 more energy, this is, on your third turn, which leaves you with 6, and 6 is enough to double Healing Wind, which is what you want. Then on the next turn, we have our 6, so we're going to use a Healing Wind, and we've also got a Vitalitize there, so we are straight away up to 7 regen. It has a cap of 10, but with 10 regen, you will be healing 30, and this heals you on your turn and your opponent's. You can only take damage on your turn. If you heal 30 with your regen, and then after that you'll heal, I think, 27, then that gives you 57 healing just from your regen. You only need to find another 20 or so, and that's your 75 per turn. So that's where we're going to start off. We'll do a block just for that tiny little bit of extra damage, and we're going to start trying to heal back up, because of course he did a big hit of us at the start there where we didn't have our regen. He's actually not now, which is great. We can recover a little bit, which is especially good because it's not giving us any healing winds. I'm going to keep using punches and blocks and stuff that's free when I have nothing else to use, but besides that, my aim right now is just to build up the regen, try and get it up to 10. Barricade, we're just going to get rid of that. It's a forget. We don't want that in our hand anymore because we've got past the early game and it's going to start clogging stuff up. We want to be making sure that we're getting those heals. We've got Siphon for a bit of healing. I'll keep jabbing him with Punch. And then hopefully we're going to start drawing Surge. Surge is going to give us our buffs because we are going to want some buffs later on. It's not super important now because the amount of damage that I'm doing to this guy is basically irrelevant. And of course, the block is never going to be helpful, really. But we want to be getting damage later on when we start getting our ramp up at turn 20. So let's try and get some surges in ready for that. Keep my regen at 10. And even though, see, we're taking loads of damage here, I just took 75 because that's the most amount I can take in a turn. And it's planning for me to take pretty much another 100 next turn. Of course, I won't be able to take 100 next turn because it caps at 75. But you see, I'm keeping the healing up. And this means that actually I'm not ever going to die. I keep being low on health, but never actually dying. Of course, you don't win every time. Sometimes they kill you before you can even get your regen up at the start, and other things can go wrong as well. But in general, this has a pretty good win rate, and because it doesn't care how much damage it's taking, in theory it can scale infinitely. Like, these guys could be doing 4,000 damage per turn if they wanted. I can heal it, and so it doesn't matter. Of course, it matters a little bit, because it matters at the start when you haven't got that regen up yet. But even then, you can be lucky, and then they can not play punches and stuff, and you might just be fine. Anyway, this one looks like it's going pretty well so far. We are over round 20, so our stuff's going to start doing a lot of damage soon. As you can see, I've been building up a fair few surges here. We've got 10 buffs, and then I've been keeping my regen at 10. Even though Vitalitize gives 3 regen, I've been using it even when it only gives 2, when it hits the cap, because it's just worth it. It's better than risking it and losing a bit of health there. So we're doing all right so far. There's another surge. And let's see how much our punches are doing right now, because it's probably quite a lot. 75 damage from a punch, that's pretty reasonable. It's only going to go up from there. 75 is probably not enough to start actually killing the guy yet, but it's enough to make a bit of a dent. As you can see, he's certainly losing a bit of health over there, and the amount of health that he's losing is going to be going up over time, which is of course what we want. Unfortunately, keep getting hit by Confuse here, which is unfortunate, but we should be fine. Shouldn't make any difference. I do actually need a bit more healing. We're down to 4 on the regen, which isn't great. There we go, building it back up again with those Vitalitize. This guy keeps confusing me, which is annoying, but it doesn't matter. We'll be fine. He's stolen one of my buffs now. Anyway, he's pretty much dead now. Because look at this. Siphon Punch doing like 140 damage each. He's only going to last another couple turns, because he can't heal that stuff. Of course, I couldn't heal all of it either, but I can heal my 75, and that's what matters. And there we go, we get our win. That took 31 turns. It was a good while, good long battle, but we do get our win, and so we move up to now 1,969 rating. My record so far, 105 wins, 55 losses. You can see that I win about double the amount that I lose, and as long as that continues, I just need to keep playing matches, and I will eventually hit the high ranks. I did the maths. In order to hit the high ranks, you need about 150 net wins. And so with the ratio that I have here, I need to play about 450 battles, which would give me 300 wins and 150 losses. And that would get me into Legend, the highest rank. Let's take a look at the actual perks themselves. What's the build look like? Firstly, we're using Kana. Kana is, of course, not the only character that works with this, but I saw a couple of other people using Kana, and I thought, hey, I've got a Kana, I'll go for it. As always, I recommend that you use a fighter that you have grabbed, and therefore you can visit them, because visiting them is very important, especially when you're going for an all-out build like this. You're going to be wanting a lot of Ascensions. I have grabbed a Kana, so that works out great. I can visit Kana. Other characters that I've seen people do this with is Anya Forger and Paimon from Genshin. I don't know, the small characters, it seems to work with them. As for the attributes, this is kind of what we're looking for, something along these lines. When you rebirth a character, this will all get reset, but it will be roughly the same each time, and so that's roughly what you're looking for. If you find a character with around this, it's probably good. Then what you're going to want to do, and this is going to be the case with any build, to be fair, I'm just putting this in here because if you're taking Dojo seriously enough to put some money into it, this is what you're going to need to do, and this is a build that is quite serious, and you will need to put some money into it. And by money, I mean damage dust, mostly. You're going to want to rebirth until you get the perks that you want here, because the perks are of course what's important, and some of them you're not going to be able to get through Ascensions, so you're just going to have to keep rebirthing. We can check the stats on this Kana, and you can see that I did 24 rebirths and 14 Ascensions, which is a fair bit of money. Each rebirth is worth 30 damage dust, which is about a ticket, and each Ascension costs probably multiple tickets on average once you get to that point. 2 or 3. So I think it's safe to say that I have quite easily spent over 50 tickets on this Kana as a fighter. So do be prepared for that. But what you're going to want to do, get the important things. Second chance. Second chance is always the most important thing, probably in any build. It literally is just when you die, don't die, which is just fantastic. You really should probably get second chance in anything, and it's quite rare, as all of these level 25 ones are. So I would rebirth until you get one with second chance. You're also going to want some immunities. I have taken Chains immunity and Stifle immunity. Fear immunity is also a good one to go for, and perhaps even Exhaust immunity. Perhaps. I think Chains immunity is better than Exhaust, but both are fine. And Fear immunity is also good. Fear and Stifle are good late game. Chains immunity is a bit better early game, as is Exhaust. Exhaust is good really early game. It's the first couple turns really where the Exhaust matters. So yeah, that's probably what you go for. And as you're rebirthing, I would only take something that has second chance and at least one of these two immunities. Or fear immunity. But you're going to want something like that here. So when I did it, I got second chance and Stifle immunity in my rebirth, and then I ascended for Chains immunity. So you're going to want to make sure you get those. Other important things, the build is obviously based around the regen, the Healing Wind, and the Vitalitize. However, these are really common with those attributes that we talked about earlier, so don't worry about them too much, you'll probably get loads. What's actually more important is making sure you've got a Surge. You need at least one Surge, and it is quite rare, so I would rebirth until you hit a Surge. You don't need two. I actually ended up getting 3 in mine. We've got one in level 1 here, one in level 70, and then I believe... Yeah, here we go. We've got one in 95. I took the Vitalitize instead, because you really don't need 3 Surges. But I got lucky and I managed to get 3. I would... 2 is pretty good. I would recommend 2. But 1 would be all right. You would probably survive on 1. Then you're going to want to make sure that you have some healing stuff in terms of... What's it called? Leech. So you've got your regen, but regen caps at 10, and like I said, the most amount that can heal you is 57 per turn. You can't get all 75 with regen, no matter how much regen you have. So you're going to need some other healing, and leech is a good way to do that. So I've got my 1 soul harvest. We'll go into this in a bit more detail in a second, but I also have a bunch of siphons. Siphons are good because they are just leech, they are cheap, and they don't have any other stuff going on. The issue with the Soul Harvest is that it forgets once you've used it. It's one-time use. Siphon isn't, so that's nice. There's also Soul Drain, which is kind of a better version of Siphon. It's 4 arrow instead of 3 arrow. It costs 2, but it also applies confusion to your opponent, which is actually really good, because of course your opponent is doing those huge attacks worth hundreds of damage, and if you can confuse them, they'll be hitting themselves with them, which is fantastic. I unfortunately didn't get any soul drains in my build, and so I can obviously stand here and say, well, you'll be fine without a soul drain. But honestly, a soul drain would really improve this build, so if you can get a soul drain, I would recommend it, because that confuse is going to be great, and it's just better than Siphon, really. That being said, Siphon is good enough as long as you have a few of them. I have 3? Yeah, I've got 3 Siphons, which is, I would say, the bare minimum, really. I would be quite happy with 3 Siphons and a Soul Drain. But roughly that kind of number is what you're looking for. And then the special thing about Soul Harvest is that it is also hold, which means that once you draw it, it stays in your hand forever until it's used. This is really good because partly it's just extra card draw. Every turn you're going to draw your 4 cards and Soul Harvest, basically. But it also means that if you get an unlucky hand, you really needed that Siphon or that Soul Drain for a bit of healing, but you didn't draw it, that's when you use the Soul Harvest. So you should keep the Soul Harvest basically for emergencies. That's what I use it for. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to die this turn because I didn't draw a Siphon. I will use Soul Harvest and I will be fine. And statistically that doesn't happen very often. Normally I have enough Siphons and stuff that I will draw one every turn. But if I get unlucky and I don't draw one, Soul Harvest is there to sort me out. Now, of course, if I don't draw one twice, I am a little screwed, because I only have the 1 Soul Harvest and it is Forget. But this is why having an extra Soul Drain would be good. Maybe even an extra Soul Harvest, who knows? Something like that would be helpful. But this is good enough. It minimizes the risk enough I would say. So the Soul Harvest is very important. I would recommend getting at least one of those, maybe even two. Soul Drain is also good, but as long as you've got some leech stuff, that's what you need. And then, yeah, just loads of Healing Winds and Vitalities. Like I said, those are going to be really common, so you can get those through the Ascensions. You rebirth until you get the important stuff, like the Surge, the level 25, 50, and 75 stuff. And probably you're going to want to make sure that you get a Soul Harvest or a Soul Drain, or maybe both. But once you've got that, you can do the fine-tuning with Ascensions. And so your Ascensions are going to be re-rolling anything that's entirely useless in your build, trying to get a couple extra Healing Winds, a couple extra Vitalities, maybe an extra Siphon, or whatever, something helpful. You can do like I did as well and re-roll one of these level 25 ones. You'll probably be alright doing that, but I wouldn't re-roll two of them. I would make sure that you get two of them in the rebirthing. So there you go, because that's the rare stuff. As for what else I've got in here, I mentioned the crowd favourite. I do also have in here Grand Plan. Using both is fine. I mean, no, don't use both. You can only use one of them, but using either is fine. Grand Plan is basically an extra surge. Crowd Favourite gives you that couple of extra energy. So with Grand Plan, you'll need to double Healing Wind / Vitalities on turn 3. Whereas with Crowd Favourite, turn 4. With Crowd Favourite, you can do it turn 3. So one turn earlier. If you use Crowd Favourite, you'll get your double heal off a turn early, which is really nice. If you would otherwise die on turn 3, that'll save you. But alternatively, getting an extra surge in early game is really helpful, especially helps out with these siphons, because the way that Leech works is that the amount of health that it restores also scales. So if you've buffed yourself a bunch, then this means that you will also be restoring more health with your siphons, which is really helpful. This is how the late game works, basically. You make your siphons buffed enough that they will heal you to full just by using it once, which is really nice. As long as you use one siphon a turn, you'll be fine. Other than that, though, most of the stuff in here is just kind of random. Got a Barricade. It's really good for early game, just because that's a lot of block. 10 block is pretty good. At level 100, this is like 35 block or something. So that's pretty good. It can help you survive those first couple of turns. It is also free. It doesn't cost any energy, so it won't ruin your double Healing Wind / Vitalities on turn 3, because it's free. And then it's Forget as well, which is actually quite nice with this, because late game you don't want to be using it anyway, because block isn't going to help you. You're going to be needing to heal that damage, because it's all going to be over damage anyway. Block won't help. So getting rid of the card out of your deck just makes you cycle faster. You're going to be seeing your Siphons more, your Vitalities more, etc. So that's actually really nice. And then I also have a Last Hope, which is basically the same thing. It's honestly not as good as Barricade, because it's less healing and it also costs energy, but it's still Forget, so that's good. I can get rid of it later on. And also healing is kind of slightly better than blocking, just because it means that it can save you late game as well, whereas the Barricade is entirely useless late game. At least Last Hope can help a little bit. And this, I think, is 27, something like that. Maybe a little bit more health on level 100, something around that number. So anyway, there you go. Last Hope is the other one that I have. If I were you, don't go for either a Last Hope or a Barricade. Barricade is useful. If you get one, be happy. But one will be plenty. You certainly don't need the Last Hope. That's just kind of random stuff. If I was to ascend Canna once more, I would certainly be getting rid of this Last Hope. But I don't know what I would take instead. A Soul Drain, but what are the chances I get a Soul Drain? Anyway, that's the build. And how you get it with your rebirths and your ascensions. I said I spent about 50 tickets on this fighter. If you want to get something with these kind of perks, you're probably going to need to be able to do the same thing, just because getting all of them in one place is really unlikely. Those rebirths and those ascensions are really important. And of course, in order to get 20 odd ascensions, this is why you need to visit them, because when you visit someone, you have the option of giving them levels as a fighter, which is why I'm currently the Koibito for Canna, because I wanted to give her ascensions. That's it. So I spent a couple months visiting Canna. I saved up about 3,000 AP, and then I got Koibido and spent it all on my fighter. So if you want to do the same thing, go ahead. You can certainly take the Koibido from me. I don't want Canna anymore. I am done with Canna's Koibido. All good there. I've done the Ascensions and I'm happy with my build, and we'll see how high up the rankings I get. It is quite funny healing all of that damage, because as you can see, you can get quite far into the negatives. So the Prince Green I took yesterday, minus 3,500 health. Pretty fantastic. Worth noting that I did win this fight, because of course I've got my regen, I've got my siphons, and I just waited out. You do also have your Wither here. Wither triggers in such a way that it doesn't really matter, which is fantastic. Once you're on the large negatives, it doesn't matter. As with a lot of other effects, what you probably should watch out for is your Confusion and your Berserk. Because if you get affected with either of those, you're going to be in a bit of a tight spot. Your card plays are going to be a little random. You kind of just have to ignore it and just keep hammering through your cards and hope they go through, because you're probably going to be in a position where if you miss off 1 or 2 card plays, it's not too major. You normally only need to play 1 or 2 cards per turn anyway, because as long as you've got your healing up, you should be fine. A lot of the time you find yourself playing an extra block or an extra punch and it isn't really necessary. But of course, if you miss it out multiple times in a row, yeah, you've got a problem. And as well, it's worth noting that Berserk can make you play your Soul Harvest, which is quite annoying as well, because you're sitting there trying to save that because it's a hold card, and then Berserk makes you play it early, and that also wastes 4 of your energy. That's not great. So yeah, do watch out for that. As well as just anything else, you know, buffs matter, debuffs matter, you know, watch out for counter. This is just general build stuff though, nothing to do with this build in particular. So I will end this video here. That's all I want to talk about with that one. I probably waited far too long, considering it was just a Karuta build, but it is pretty in-depth, and hopefully you should be able to go and construct that for yourself if you want. It will take some time. I have to say it will take some time, because, like I say, you've got to visit for ages so that you can build up enough AP. Alternatively, you could pay the Koibido to do it. Hey, someone come pay me while I'm Koibido. I'll level up your Canna. But that costs even more. And then, of course, you've got to spend on the damage dust and stuff. So, all in all, it's an expensive process, but you get 300 tickets if you get into Legend on the Dojo ranking at the end of the month. So go for it. And then it pays itself back. Isn't that great? Anyway, I will be leaving this video here. Bye!